Gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. If you are able, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag Thank you. And please take this chance to silence all your mobile devices. You know, we're here to listen to the candidates. There are cards and pens available at the table where you got your handouts if you'd like to submit a question. All submitted questions will be considered. We do have a list already, but always open to good ideas. I'd like to introduce the Elections Committee. I'm Steve Habiger, the chairman. On the committee, we have Mark Heinz, Ginger Satula, Barbara Waschuk and Bob Windsor are not able to be with us this morning. Director Steve Tuttle is our board liaison. On May 17th, letters were mailed to all candidates defining requested information with a deadline. All materials submitted by the deadline are printed in the handout and will be printed in OPA publications over the course of the election. We intend to mail the ballots the week of 8 July, and they are due back by the close of business on August 7th. They must be received either in the ballot box located in the police department of the admin building or in the P.O. box in Berlin Post Office. So please allow processing time. We want to count your ballot. Your ballot is very important. This year, our candidates are, in ballot order, Tom Janicek, Larry Perrone, Camelia Rogers, Paula Gray, Sean Kotwicka, Edward Solon, and Gregory Turner. From now on, I'll refer to the candidates by their first names. Today, we have a little different process than we did last time. Each candidate, except Ed Solon, will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Ed will have the 3 minutes that were afforded at the first forum. We have a series of questions prepared, and the candidates will be called to answer them in random order. At the end, so that we maintain our schedule, we're going to be out of here by noon. There's another event coming right behind us today. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Again, Ed will be afforded 3 minutes, and that will be in reverse ballot order. Unfortunately, Tom has to depart in about an hour for a personal matter, so we will begin with him with his opening statement. Tom?
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Steve and the election committee for, hold the mic. Okay, sorry. I forgot we're on TV. All you people in computer land, thank you too for watching. I know it's Saturday. I appreciate everybody coming out. Thanks to all the candidates running for the board. I apologize that I have to leave in an hour. I have a funeral I have to go to. Nothing exciting, unfortunately. I'm running for the board for one reason. I ran for the board 3 years ago. I realized I didn't know enough about what was going on in the Pines, and I told everybody when I ran that if I didn't get elected, I would jump in and do more to help Ocean Pines. I did that. I joined the Environmental Committee, Natural Assets Committee, became its chairman the next year. We've done a lot of incredible things in the last 3 years. Brought Bay Day to the Pines, which is going to come back in September 8th. We put together projects for the mailboxes to get them taken care of. We're working on drainage ditches and drainage issues right now as we speak with Department of Natural Resources and Maryland Coastal Bays, working to get grants to get that funded. I've also worked with St. Martin, Protective of St. Martin, to make sure we didn't get the CAFO on Peerless Road. That did not come to effect, whether it was us or whatever the reason may be. We worked real hard to make sure that didn't happen in our backyard. I'm on the board of Aztec Coastal Trust. I brought testing to our waterways, to our canals, and our beaches on Swim and Racket Club to make sure that we don't end up with what's happening in Delaware Bay right now, high bacteria levels in cases of skin-eating viruses. So I'm working real hard to make sure that we keep Ocean Pines a place that I've loved since 1984 and that I want to live in and keep it going in the right direction. So I would hope that you agree with most of what I say and that you vote for me when the ballots come out. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Larry Perrone. I've been a property owner here for 37 years, and I am retired and live here full-time in Ocean Pines. Along with Tom, we ran the same at the same time, and I did the same thing he did, except I got involved with the Budget and Finance Committee. I have a background in management and dealing with large numbers. As a result, currently I am the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee for Ocean Pines. I've been involved in various work groups that have had an impact already on Ocean Pines. I was involved in the work group that determined to switch insurance brokers, which saved us a 3% on our insurance premiums. I was involved in the work group that analyzed whether or not we should outsource our finance department, as well as just recently on the work group that analyzed whether or not we should outsource our overall management structure. In addition to that, I am currently on the work group that is looking at our salary and benefit structure here in Ocean Pines. It's, again, work in progress, and I'm also on the work group that is looking into our upcoming contract negotiations with the Mount Ork Corporation. The reason that I decided to run for the board is that if you look around at what's going on here, things are rolling along pretty good here in Ocean Pines. We currently have a board that is working together well as a team with the general manager, with the various committees, and if I'm elected, it's my intention to continue that progress moving forward. Again, thank you for coming out this morning, and the same for the people who are watching on TV, and I would ask for your support in the election. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Camilla Rogers, and I am seeking a position on the board as well. By way of background, I am a registered nurse. I graduated from Graceland University in Lamoni, Iowa in 1975, and then pursued a master's degree in nursing and nurse practitioner certification that I finished in 1980. Subsequently, I attended law school so that I could sort of merge those two professions together, and I have definitely enjoyed doing that. My husband, Paul, in the Hawaiian shirt back there, and I moved to Ocean Pines a year ago. And we moved down here with expectations of breaking into retirement, but obviously for both of us, that really hasn't happened. We love it in Ocean Pines, and we are very glad to be a part of this community and look forward to many happy years to come here. I believe that, by way of background, what I would bring to the board is I have an extensive history in strategic planning. In the time before I went to law school and even afterwards, I was engaged in strategic planning processes at many hospitals, and my last position was at Shepherd Pratt when we were building a new building. I had a lot of responsibility in that regard, setting strategic planning goals and making sure that they were that we were able to meet those by taking the objectives that we wanted to accomplish and bouncing them up against the strategic plan. I believe that there is a lot more work to do. I hope that you will entrust me to be a part of the work that remains here to do. This is a dynamic process. There are things that can be changed, such as some of our environmental considerations out here. We are growing, we are aging, and it is important to keep up with that so that this is the kind of community all of us are proud to be a part of and call home and are delighted to live here. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paula Gray. I am a resident of Ocean Pines almost 4 years now, but I spent 10 or 11 years down here with a family member every minute I could. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother. I am retired as a railroad yardmaster after 32 years, a position requiring extreme planning, both daily and long-term, decision-making, and a myriad of interactions with a lot of people, federal agencies, corporate departments, U.S. government, Maryland government, customers, both large, like United Parcel at Christmas, with all of that planning, and small. Personnel planning, training and placements, common ground finding with corporations, unions, and additional duties of very small print. Each level had a fiduciary legal responsibility. I was a federal hazmat trainer across the country and worked with DOD as a contractual instructor after my retirement. My volunteer positions have included treasurer and then president of a nonprofit, Friends of Downs Park, from 2009 to 2014 that had its extreme share of issues at that time. I worked with the women's prison educational programs. I was appointed by Governor Schaefer to the Foster Care Review Board, serving children and families in extreme peril, and held that position for 6 years. I was a Little League and girls softball volunteer for 12. My educational background, I was the first in my family to be a college graduate from UMBC. I'm a member of American University, the Ocean Pines Women's Club, American Mensa, and I volunteer with Coastal Base for the SEALs. I hope you would think that what does this have to do with Pines? I see my position on the board as working with people and trying to bring in more levels of people across the board so everyone's more comfortable here at the Pines. I hope you have support from me, and I hope that you would appreciate that people are what make the Pines. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Kotwicka. I'm 38 years old, and in that long-term experience in my career, I've done many, many things as well. Unfortunately, I don't have the accolades that I can pull forth as some of the others on this board, but I'll tell you one thing. I currently own property in another community, which I sit on the board, and my first major decision, I saved 49% by bringing in the right people to do the job. I have the ability and the connections through my career, through my experience and my time, to help make the right decisions by bringing forth those types of people. And this was a stormwater management issue, and that's exactly what it was. And we were able to save 49% by bringing in the proper people to do the job. Those people were seen here doing a job in the community here not too long ago. The other people who had the bid that was 51% higher than this. These are the things I want to do. I want to drain the swamp here, metaphorically and realistically. You know, the stormwater management issue is a huge issue here. It needs to be taken care of. It needs to be taken care of strategically over time, not just going from place to place. Although we're doing a great job with the community and getting some of those people taken care of, the issue as a whole is not being taken care of. I have 13 years in the restaurant business. I have 5 years in the real estate business. The real estate is the most important thing for me. I am not a current resident in the community, which some people will look down upon, but I own the property here. I care about the long-term value and appeal for this community. And I look forward to helping everybody out that sits on the board or will soon sit on the board and make this all a better place.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. My name is Hans Edward Solem Jr. I'm 73 years old. I've owned property in Ocean Pines since 1995. My wife and I were married in 1971, and we're still married. This October it'll be 48 years. We have 3 adult children. Now, since I'm allotted 3 minutes, I'm going to have to go way back to fill up the 3 minutes. So in 1964, I graduated high school. I was student council president. I was also elected most likely to succeed. From there, I went to Penn State University, took a degree in history, nearly flunked out my freshman year, but as did a lot of people, but I made it through. A little bit of a bayonet in my back. Vietnam was looming, so I had to maintain my matriculation. Graduated in 1968 and was accepted at Duquesne University Law School, 1968, which is where I started. My local draft board sent me a notice in March. You've been selected to join, and I got a deferment until June. Went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and finished my basic training. My experience there was, again, they put me in charge of stuff, and so as a result, I was able to avoid KP. I only have a minute and a half left, geez. So then Then they sent me to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And I was put into the artillery intelligence situation and was taught how to set quadrant deflections on howitzers, and I subsequently learned that that was all calculus, and I never knew I had any aptitude for high-end mathematics, but I went through, and again, I was in a leadership position. On leaving the military successfully with an honorable discharge, I went back to law school and finished in 1974. Since 1974, I've been actively engaged in the practice of law. Now, I want to give you some perspective on my brain. I believe in microanalytics, okay? And just as a matter of two quick examples, I bought a set of 4 tires from Sears Roebuck one time, and they said, do you want flat insurance? I said, yeah. He said, well, which tire do you want it on? I said, I want it on the flat one. And so sooner or later, I got a flat tire, and I went back to Sears, and I said, I got a flat tire. And he said, well, you only bought insurance on one. I said, yeah, it's the flat one. So this next time I went back to Sears to buy tires, they had inventoried all of the control numbers for the tires, so I had to pay for all 4 tires instead of one. I believe in microanalytics, and I think I can bring that perspective to the board. Thank you.
How's everybody doing? My name's Greg Turner. I've lived in Ocean Pines since 1987 when I moved here after my semester in Prince George's Community College, which I was engaged in criminology law enforcement. When I moved down here, the educational things weren't that impressed in, plus my age wasn't going to allow me to be a patrol officer. So I got into hotel, motel, club, restaurant, and that's where my schooling took me to. And that was with Warwick Tech. And after getting out of the restaurants, I got into construction, and then my rest of my education and training is in construction management, as well as electrical and electrical construction. I ran for the board last year, and I thank the 770 people who voted for me for the sheer fact that we had lost $1 million, and nobody seemed to have been able to account for it. And since then, we've done an audit, and they found various places where they need to be improved and things of this nature, which is fine. I was told at the last town meeting that they didn't lose the money, it was just misappropriated, missed. Well, my answer is still the same as what it was then. It's poof, it's gone. Every one of us had to pay $35 to bring that $1 million back to the community. I don't know about you, but I think that was a little wrong, especially if it was misappropriated, as I was told. So my thing is this, I'm running again, and we've got some neat projects going on. One I didn't wholeheartedly approve, but I'm starting to come around to it, which is the country club. There's some other things, issues with that, and I'm running out of time. So, but anyways, thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll move now to questions. And the first question, Larry, you will lead off, and Greg, you're on deck. On July 11th, the Maryland Department of Transportation will host a meeting to discuss the proposed roundabout in place of the North Gate traffic light. As a director, how would you approach this matter?
Well, I got to tell you, having spent some time up in New Jersey, and I can tell you I am not a fan of these roundabouts. But quite honestly, this is not Ocean Pines' decision. The state decided that this is what they're going to do, and my suspicion is that the medical group outside put pressure on the state to approve this roundabout because Ocean Pines a couple years ago decided not to give them access through our community. I know that currently Steve Tuttle, who's on the board, is currently working, heading up the project with the state. I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do. They can take the land from us. if they choose. And I think the best thing that we can do at this point is try to cooperate with the state. There's no sense in us trying to file a lawsuit against the state, the Department of Transportation, to prevent this roundabout from coming here. But I got to tell you, I agree with a lot of the things that are being said, that I just don't see how it benefits Ocean Pines. You know, I've been coming down here for 37 years. One of the landmarks here is the bridge and at the North Gate, and I would hope that we're able to keep it. I'm not sure if the bridge is going to be gone or if it's going to be it'll be incorporated into it. But I'm not happy about it, but I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do about it.
Thank you, Greg. And Ed is on deck.
Thank you. Well, as far as the roundabout goes, I'm absolutely adamantly opposed to it. If you've ever go up to Salisbury and look at the one in front of Warwick Community College, it's interesting. There's only a small volume of vehicles there, and just look at how things get snarled and tagged and turned around. If you're going to put one out here at the South Gate, or North Gate, you know, you're looking at hundreds of cars in the summertime coming out of Ocean Pines and thousands of cars coming by us. And that roundabout is just going to produce a lot of fender benders, and I'm sure there'll be some hostilities from people and motorists that have to deal with it. They're not really, I don't feel they're really designed for a high traffic area. I noticed the county tried to put one in at the South Gate there at Macklin Creek and Ocean Parkway. And to be honest with you, the fire department went after it with a vengeance and to get it not installed, just for the sheer fact that the volume of accidents there was only 1 or 2 every couple of years. I know the accident rate up at the North Gate is more than that. As being a fireman for 20 years and being a fire chief there here in Ocean Pines for 3 years, that the traffic light is the problem, and the traffic light needs to be adjusted to accurately go with the traffic, and that's the problem. And I think that the accident rate has actually declined since more people are getting into the traffic light the way it's set up. But I think that basically it's just it's with the new intersection they put up there, they've caused a lot of problems with that. And it's still, again, I believe that a traffic light and doing it properly and adjusting it properly would take care of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Ed and Paula, you'll be next.
Yes, hi. With regard to roundabouts, my experience has been pretty much that they work well in more rural areas where you don't have the volume of traffic that you would have at that North Gate entrance. The problem I'm having with the whole situation is I don't think that there has been a complete and thorough microanalysis of the entire situation. The thing that bothers me is you've got a huge open field across the street, directly across the street from the North Gate. That open field is eventually going to be developed. I mean, look at what's happening on this side of 589. All the office and professional buildings are going up, and more traffic is being generated. My concern would be you do have access to courts. It does take time, it does take money, but whether or not there's been any alternative analysis for other means of controlling or facilitating traffic in and out of Ocean Pines. I've often wondered why there were no ramps connecting Ocean Parkway with Route 90. You could have an entrance ramp going in, an exit ramp coming out. Would facilitate the use of our yacht club and golf courses from Ocean City itself, because it would make the public amenities here more accessible, and would also make access to Ocean City more accessible for Ocean Pine residents. So I think that alternatives need to be evaluated to address the overall total traffic situation, rather than just what you have going through there now based on the current arrangement. So if I were elected, I would move to have other access points considered in order to make 589 more accessible for Ocean Pine residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Paula and Sean will be next.
Well, I didn't do too well in statistics, but I did really well in geometry. And when I saw this picture in the paper, you take a look at it and you use the lakes as a basis, okay? How many cars can drop out of Ocean Pines into that little circle at one time? How many people are going to sit there and wait and hope? Based on this sketch, maybe 2 cars. You're only going to drop across, and now you're going to wait because you have to free up the people coming in on 589. This is never going to work. But then again, cup of coffee last week on a Tuesday, sat there and watched the number of people coming out of Ocean Pines. At traffic light red, about 30 cars backed up, and all but 2 got out on that light. That's not going to happen with this. And if you think you're upset, try living on some of the alternative routes that are going to get us out of the Pines. And I agree with him wholeheartedly. The study has been, this has been pressured by the hospital organizations, and in case you missed this one, on 589, just south of the South Gate, Atlantic General's building a huge facility. They got permission, all right? And that's going to add even more traffic to this 589. How do you think that some of our seniors, I'm one so I can get away with this, are going to be able to use their abilities to get out into that? They're not. They can hardly sometimes get through the light, and I'm one of them too. All right? So what you need to do is get on your politicians, and if I was elected to the board, I would be adamantly against this. This is a political move by people who got upset because they didn't get what they wanted. And we need to, as a board and as a community, we need to politically move back. This is unfair to all of us here. It's going to detract from your property values, and people making noise do work, as we've seen in a lot of elections. Have a safe day.
Thank you. Sean, Tom, you're next.
All right. Me and Tom seem to have a similar background as we both went to the same college. We both spent some time in New Jersey. Sometimes our outlook may be a little different. I spent about a year in New Jersey as I traveled between 42 different universities, from place to place. And I experienced a handful of roundabouts in my time on that road. And they do work. Simple as you go up to Rehoboth, you're going to see that in the city of Rehoboth downtown where the traffic is amassed as well. This traffic pattern is much larger than there, so it may be an issue. But as I agree with Tom here, it's out of our hands. It literally is out of our hands. We do not need to waste any more time on this because it's out of our hands, unfortunately.
Thank you, Sean. Tom, and Cammie will be next.
All right. I'm not real keen on it either. As Sean said, there is one in Rehoboth, coming out of Rehoboth Beach, right there where they put the new rise up, which is good for them for selling coffee. But I've been through it many times because I work up there a lot, and it's never really crowded. But I'm hoping that there's some traffic studies, because anybody that goes out on 589 from this weekend on, anytime during the day, is going to be stuck in traffic from the North Gate Bridge all the way to 589. So, I mean, I was out there on Thursday afternoon, and the traffic, as soon as you come over the bridge and come out of the light, it stopped all the way under the 90 bridge up to the next light. It looks as though it's already a done deal. I'm not so sure that it is. I'd like to do a little more research in it, but they're already doing core drilling and soil samples all around there. There's a lot of markings all over our wonderful pavers, so apparently somebody's already taken a lot of action to make sure that this is happening. I'm pretty sure it's at the corporate level somewhere over there next to in all those wonderful cancer centers we have, but I'm not allowed to call anybody out because I got in trouble for that last time, so I won't do that. But what I would like to see is, if it's going to happen, maybe we can leverage a little bit of it and get dualization of 589, which we've been talking about for the last 20 years or so. That thing we should be 4 lanes going across through Ocean Pines. It might not clear up all the traffic, but it'll get more area for cars, turn lanes for getting in and out of the shopping centers and back into the Pines. So if it's going to happen, if we don't have any recourse, which I would really like to look into seeing what recourse we have, I'd like to at least leverage what we have and get more information about dualization of 589 all the way through the Pines area. So. Who's next? Oh,
Thank you, Tom. Cammie.
I'll just hand it to you.
I have driven through roundabouts, not only in this country or state, but also in many, many others, and I have to agree with my fellow panel members that I certainly I have no fondness for roundabouts. I understand the implications of building the new Sturgis Center further up on 589, but I agree with my worthy opponents that I don't believe that there has been enough done to really study this program or to study this prospect in its entirety. I know that for some of you and for some people that I have talked to during the course of this election, that perhaps the North Bridge has outgrown its usefulness. At one point, it was the guard bridge for the community. Now it is a very lovely piece of Ocean Pines history. I would hate to see it go. Maybe some of you would hate to see it go because it's an important part of who we are. But I'm not certain that putting a roundabout there, as Paula was kind enough to bring her diagram here this morning, it looks like once you enter the roundabout, there is another stop point, and after you get 2/3 of the way around the roundabout, there becomes yet another stop point, which I think is going to be very, very, very disastrous. I agree that maybe we should have another alternative into Ocean Pines. I understand that the soil samples and everything are moving right along. So if I am elected to the board, I would certainly press those at MDOT who want to put this roundabout in to give us alternatives. There must be an alternative to this solution rather than put something in that is probably going to be rife with hazards for especially our senior population, because getting into a roundabout with this magnitude is certainly going to be very confusing to most of us, if not all of us, from time to time. Thank you.
Thank you. Cammie, hold the phone. You're going to be first up on the next question. John Viola recently signed a 6-month contract to continue as general manager. What are your thoughts about securing a permanent general manager? The board of directors is going to face this issue very quickly. Cammie, you're first, and Tom, you're up next.
I understand, thank goodness, that Mr. Viola is doing a wonderful job. I have talked to many of you who are on the current board of directors, and there is great delight and pleasure in what he has been able to bring. His opinion is, at least to my hearing and understanding, that he is pleased with the actions of the board and wants to remain in place here. So I think we have some alternatives at this point. If Mr. Viola wants to stay on and continue to continues his management style in the way that we've seen, I think that that would be a great blessing, rather than attempting to turn this management position over to yet another individual who may or may not be known to the community. The nice thing that we're doing with Mr. Viola here now is he has a test period. This is a very important thing. He has a grace period and a test period where we as a community can assess his ability to carry on, and if he wants to stay, then certainly that is something that we should all consider. Of course, there are from time to time going to be other important candidates. There are going to be candidates who will come forth who have excellent qualifications to manage Ocean Pines. But sometimes a good rule of thumb is that if it's not broke, why would we want to fix it? If we have someone in place who is doing a good job, is a pleasure to work with, and is bringing Ocean Pines into a positive financial position and is well received by the staff, by the board, and others, I think he should have a vote of confidence as long as it is deserved. If not, we always have options, but right now, it seems that this is a very effective course of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Cammie. Tom and Sean will be after Tom.
Yeah, I agree with Cammie about that. I appreciate everything that John's doing. I mean, he's wearing a couple of hats, and the general manager hat is a huge one. Gets lots of responsibilities with it. What I like most about what's going on now is that we're actually spreading some of that responsibility out by having Colby as the director of operations director. So the general manager doesn't have to be responsible for everything. Everybody answers to him, but he's not responsible for everything. Whether we keep him on as the general manager or not, it's kind of going to be up to him and the next board. I think him being treasurer and general manager, it seems to me like it might just get to be a little too much and we might start looking for a general manager. I think we need to structure the general manager position differently, though. I really believe that it's too much for one guy. I think that to have a general manager like we used to have just won't work. I think you have to have a general manager and an operations manager, somebody to take the flack for him a little bit so he doesn't have to deal and be under the gun at all times and take all the pressure and not be able to answer all the questions at once. Because it's very important here to get answers out to people. People want to know what's going on. People want to know when their ditches are going to be cleaned. People want to know when Public Works is coming out to fix stuff. But the general manager can't answer all those questions and have meetings with the board and have meetings with the commissioners of Worcester County. It's a big job, and it's got to get very stressful. I mean, I'll give kudos to John Bailey. We were $1.5 million, $1.2 million in the hole, and now we're 130 to the positive 1 year with him as general manager. So I understand that there were some things that went on, and he's not with us any longer, but I have no problem keeping John Viola on if he wants to stay with us, but I do believe we should get a general manager, restructure the position so we have an operations manager to take some of the heat off of the general manager so he doesn't have to be the only one responsible for all the actions.
Thank you, Tom. Sean and Ed will be next.
As to say, if it's not broke, don't try to fix it. Unfortunately, Mr. Bailey was here fixing the issue, and that got broke very quickly. I'm not saying that Mr. Viola is not doing a great job, and Colby is. They are both doing a great job currently, but they have just moved in those positions just a short time ago. Getting somebody with experience and knowledge on how to run an operation and looking at it objectively from an outside view is very important. If you look what was broke before when Brent Hill, excuse me for calling out somebody, when things happen, when you took somebody from the board and put them in the position as a general manager and had dual responsibilities, we were in a very, very dire position there as we dropped millions of dollars, misallocated, however you want to sell it. It's the truth. We can't have somebody that's already has their hand in the cookie jar as far as making those decisions and then somebody controlling those decisions and that money. It's just not appropriate. We need checks and balances, not somebody that's sitting there saying, hey, I'm here, now I'm here. I'm checking on this, but I'm checking on this at the same time. We need somebody from an outside source with experience and knowledge how to run this operation with an objective view.
Thank you, Sean. Ed and Paula will be next.
Well, I would like to say kudos to Mr. Viola for stepping in and handling the situation as he has so competently done. However, my perspective on the general manager position is that you've got to go back and look at the roots of the enabling authorization. How is the function of the general manager position defined? Maybe it needs to be redefined. You have to go back and look at the details. Again, we're talking about micro-analytics and seeing whether or not the general manager position needs to be redefined. Once you clarify the definition and establish what the facts of the requirements mandate, then you're going to be able to better craft a job description that can be filled by either one person or multiple people, and possibly have to spread the responsibility to other individuals in positions of authority within the Ocean Pines administration. The trouble, I think, is one of a Band-Aid fix that we're presently in, and I always live by the adage of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And if you don't pay attention to what's going on under your nose, then you're going to have a bigger problem later on. So my approach would be to reevaluate the entire general manager position, redefine the parameters of that position, and adequately compensate the individual or individuals for the work that they are expected to perform. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Paula and Larry will be next.
Well, I'm an old adage believer, too, and if it's not, that what has happened here, we never knew why Mr. Bailey left. That's moot. It's done. Okay? But what we saw was a fine man step up and take on the responsibility that brought us into the black. I even chastise our board president that we had to go buy black ink for the first time. And it was, I also have kudos to the current board for having the daring to let that happen, to take a step out from something we've never done before, and look how it has benefited us. The main important thing down here for those of us who have all moved here, and there are a lot of us in the last 4 to 5 years as full-time, is the culture. It's very difficult to go outside and get a person to come in and be a general manager of an operation who might not understand the culture. That's not saying we're right, that's not saying we're wrong, it's the culture. And what happened with Mr. Viola when John stepped in and brought Colby along, if you're not aware, within 2 months, they saved us on a $100,000 process already in place. They saved us $84,000. Now, in order to change the general manager's position, from what I've read in our bylaws, it's going to take a little bit more than just sitting down and saying, oops, we're going to do this. You're going to have to change the bylaws. You're going to have to change a whole lot. And that's going to take a period of time. Just because someone steps in is good is no reason to say they shouldn't stay there. There's no reason to say that you can't do both positions. I don't believe that should happen, checks and balances. But in my position, and I have to watch the adjective here, you can find a treasurer a lot easier than you can find a general manager who is as successful as what we've seen here in the past 6 to 8 months. Maybe we need to hold him in place for 2 years on a long trial and see who shows up. And if no one shows up, by that time, we'll have our bylaws reconfigured and be able to make changes if we need to. Thank you for thinking about this process.
Thank you, Paula. Larry, and then Greg.
Well, let me start off by saying that John and I are personal friends, and I have to tell you, I take offense to your comment that he's got his fingers in the cookie jar. John goes out of his way to make sure that he never touches money here. He did the same thing as a treasurer, and for you to make a comment like that, I find offensive. But besides that, knowing how John operates, I think the big difference that we see here is that John understands that he does not know everything about everything. He's going out of his way to bring the talent that we have in this community to bear, and relying on people who are subject experts and using their expertise. And a perfect example is myself. I've got 36 years in the insurance business. When we went through the process of evaluating our insurance needs and getting whether or not we needed to change brokers, I was on that committee, and we evaluated it and made the right decision, as opposed to hiring a consultant that was being pushed by a former director, and which would have cost Ocean Pines another $20,000, $25,000. John has restructured what's going on here. Colby Phillips is the director of operations, and John is delegating what's going on here. I don't see any need to redefine the role of the general manager. We also looked at whether or not we should outsource the management operation. I think that's what Sean is referring to. To do that, if you read the information that we produced, you were looking at an increase of cost based on what Mr. Bailey was making and his benefits, from either 164% to over 300% to outsource that job. I don't think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Larry. Greg?
Thank you. Picking on you again. First off, let me get back to the last question for a solution, since I didn't really come up with one. But we have Beecham Road, and Beecham Road very seldom gets used, and that could be a very good access point to 589 if we put a signage up saying as an alternate route, use Beecham Road. The only time it really gets clogged up is at church time. On to the community manager. I kind of go along with what Sean was saying, for the sheer fact that, you know, it is, I've seen it before out of the 40-plus years I've lived here, you know, cronyism, backslapping, stuff like that. I'm not saying the guy does that, and I kind of take offense of cookie hand in a cookie jar, too. I don't think that's fair. I'm sorry. How about that? Is this thing on? Okay. Oh, hold it close. Oh, gee. Closer. Okay. And anyways, my feeling is that our community manager should be somebody from outside. Somebody who doesn't come in here and has an axe to grind, doesn't have a back to slap, doesn't have cronyism. And I've seen it over the years, and I appall it. But I just feel that that's the way to go is to outsource it. Whether the guy's doing a good job or not, and I feel he probably is doing a good job from what I'm listening to some people here and then my neighbors telling me they feel he is doing a good job. So put his name into consideration. But I would think that he would be low down on the list for the sheer fact that he is here and he's been around, and he may or may not have debts to pay. And that's the thing I worry about. That's why I'd rather see somebody from the outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. For this next question, Larry, you'll be leading off, followed by Sean. We're going to circle back to a question we asked at the first forum, stormwater management. It's a big issue here. Estimates of corrective action range from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. As a director, how would you attack this problem? Larry, then Sean.
I haven't seen any of those estimates. I think that's probably anecdotal information. So I'm not sure if those numbers are correct. I suspect that it's going to be a very expensive process. But again, as somebody pointed out, I think Tom pointed out at our first forum, we're built on a swamp. Ocean Pines is not responsible for individual homeowners' properties. However, we are responsible for the drainage ditches and the roads and the flow. One good thing that Mr. Bailey looked into when he was the general manager was putting together some teams that would be able to go through the community and deal with the ditches on a routine basis. Now, when we looked at what the cost of that was going to be, it was going to be about $800,000, and that was going to be on an ongoing basis. I think that, and my answer to this question at the first forum was that Ocean Pines needs to make sure that we are doing everything we can in regard to our drainage ditches, the roads, keeping those clear and operational. Tom, I know, is, with the Environmental Committee, they are looking into other solutions here. At the last forum, it was suggested that we put retention ponds on the golf course, which is just another attempt by some individuals to shut down another amenity here. That's a terrible idea. There has to be other ways to do it than trying to drain the water onto the golf course. For me, this is a big priority. We have gotten most of the big projects out of the way, and we will have the money to deal with this. The question is, again, I have not seen how much it's going to cost.
Thank you, Larry. Sean, followed by Greg.
First, I want to start off by correcting my verbiage. When I said hand in the cookie jar, I didn't mean that he was actually doing anything in any sense of that way. I just want to make that clear. The ability is there, is what I meant to say. The ability for somebody to do that is there. As far as stormwater management, we look at the strategic plan, what needs to be in place, rather than, once again, when I started off by saying we don't need to go from person to person who calls us in and says there's water in their home and take care of that. We need something more invasive, a little bit larger scale to determine that. My quote about the golf course, that was satire. We don't have an answer right now, let's use that. Talking about getting rid of an amenity, I didn't ask to get rid of any amenity. That was satire. But we did, however, get rid of the car up here, which wasn't an amenity by the current board. That's just something that I see. We need to take something a little further, study it from outside, get somebody in who has experience and knowledge in this field with benchmarks and studies that have already existed to help these stormwater management issues become more easier to deal with in a larger scale rather than going from home to home.
Thank you, Sean. Greg, followed by Cammie.
Having a personal experience with the flooding and stuff in Ocean Pines, my backyard floods every time it rains. So I'm sympathetic to some of them. If you go back in the area back behind Tail the Fox, in that area, again, I've said it and say it again, water does not run uphill. It runs downhill. And the bad thing is we are built on a low-lying area. I heard the comment of draining the water onto the golf course or retention ponds and stuff like that, which isn't a good idea for the sheer fact that on a heavy rain and a storm rain, the golf club or golf course is underwater too. So you're not gaining anything. The problem is that the water, we cannot control it. We cannot do anything with it. It runs downhill. And the bad thing is, as long as I've lived here, Route 90 is a dividing line, and the water backs up to Route 90. It cut the drainage off when they put Route 90 in. And anything that happens has got to happen with the state of Maryland, and they're going to have to give us their blessing. I don't see that coming. The homes that are here were just built too low. They were built at cost, and plus the state of Maryland says we couldn't add fill and stuff to bring the property up. I can't remember what they called the reasoning behind it. You could only fill a piece of property to 4 feet from the foundation, which didn't help anything. It made a bigger problem. It made a problem for neighbors. I had problems with the ECC here, making me put in berms and stuff to keep water off other people's property. Well, I kept it off from my side, but the guy on the other side of the house, it just went the other direction. So the problem is huge, and without any intervention or anything like that, the only answer is going to be like what they have down in New Orleans, and that's going to be with pumps and stuff like that. That's the only answer to it, because it doesn't coagulate.
Thank you, Greg. Cammie, followed by Ed.
Before my husband and I moved down here, I had a very dear friend back in Harford County who is an attorney that works in the Cecil County courts. And when I told him that we were moving to Ocean Pines, he said, you know all the trouble they have with storm drainage and that they were built on a swamp. I think that was supposed to discourage me from moving down here, but thank goodness it did not. I, too, am aware of the issues that we have. We have a very dear friend who every time it rains, his backyard floods, and he has even put up an open invitation to a mosquito habitat in the, just to make them feel a little bit more comfortable. I agree that I don't have answers to the storm drainage issue. I wish I did, because if I did, I would absolutely love to see that happen. I believe, in all truth, that this starts way back at the beginning, that we are given a set of circumstances that we cannot necessarily control. But the things that we can control is when we have builders come in to put in new houses here, we need to understand and ensure that they will build the new houses at such elevations, even if they have to bring in fill dirt, to do that so that it minimizes the storm drainage and the runoff that we are seeking. I also, and I'm not necessarily encouraging this for other people, but as a property owner, I feel that I have some sort of obligation, at least for now, to perhaps clean out those storm drains every once in a while. And I have cleaned them out myself with poles, and I can see what accumulates in those storm drains, and it is not a pretty sight. So I think that there needs to be a very concerted way of looking at this. I know that we have had analysis of this problem over the years. The new board, I hope, will be charged with pulling out those executive summaries from all of the studies that have been done and come up with a strategic plan for rebuilding the storm drain system to the extent that it's possible. But moving forward, there needs to be some additional constraints put on those who are building and developing here. Thank you.
Ed, I'd like to go on audible at the line. I see by the clock on the wall we're getting close to time for Tom to leave. I'd like to, Tom, okay, then go ahead. Thank you. Ed?
Back in '95, when we were building our house at 211 Teal Circle, I had the occasion to speak with the foundation guy, and he was an older Indian from up around Oak Orchard. And he was telling me that our particular lot was original dirt. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, this lot is not a filled-in area. He said, this is original dirt, and you're well above any kind of flooding that might occur. To this day, people ask me, well, who carries your flood insurance? And I say, I don't have flood insurance because we're already flooded, okay? And that is the fact of Ocean Pines. Ocean Pines was already flooded when it was built. Now, if you go back to the maps, you're going to see there's got to be maps somewhere that say exactly what areas were at the water level or below and what areas got filled in. Those areas have to be reevaluated to see if something can be done in those specific areas that were backfilled to improve the drainage in those areas. I know that there have been occasions I can stand in my driveway and look back up the street and I can see that the topography drops ever so slightly to an area which people have come here and stated clearly that their houses are sinking. And so those areas need to be focused on. If you want a really shocking revelation, you can go to the federal wetlands flooding maps to show exactly what the projection is for what areas of Ocean Pines are going to be underwater in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, and it's shocking. My house is not in that section, to my glee. But I would say that there are vast areas in Ocean Pines that are, and with the aspect of rising water tables globally, we're going to have to do something about it, lest we all lose significant property values. I may not even be able to get to my driveway someday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Tom, followed by Paula.
Well, as you know, if you listen to the last forum, it's an issue that I'm very close to, the drainage issue. I have lots of friends who are in some of the areas that cannot get to their backyard when it rains, and some that can't get to their front door when we have substantial rain. The problem is much larger than a board can handle. At this moment, there's been an RFP issued for an engineer to be paid for by Maryland Coastal Bays for just this issue, to bring him down here, to look over the topography of Ocean Pines, and to figure out whether or not or how we can actually get the water to drain, whether putting in pollination gardens, whether putting in drainage ponds, how it's going to work. Because not only can you have to drain the water, you want to make sure that it doesn't drain directly into our estuaries. You don't want it to go right into the St. Martin's River, because all the fertilizer and all that stuff, that's what pollutes our waterways. So it's very important. It's an issue that's bigger than us. It's going to take some money to get it done. It is going to be our next big issue that we're going to have to pay for. I'm also working on getting grants to have the whole thing funded. I'm working on that as we speak. I have a meeting next Friday with Maryland Coastal Bays Department of Natural Resources and the Environmental and Natural Assets Committee. So we are actually working on this issue. It is a big issue. It affects a lot of people in the Pines, and I feel for those who have this issue. But believe me, I vacuum out under my house at least every 2 weeks, just because of the fact that the water goes under there and it just sits. With that said, if you ever have any questions, feel free to call me about it. We'll present more information as we get it through the Environmental Committee. You're welcome to come to our meetings, which are the fourth Wednesday of every month. This is my last statement, because I do have to go, and I apologize. I want to thank everybody for coming, thank the candidates for putting in their time. It's a beautiful Saturday. There's so much to do this weekend. I hope everybody gets out. I'm going to give you an extra few minutes because I'm not going to be here, so you save at least 6 minutes for me leaving. But thank you again, and please vote and get your ballots in on time. Last year we had 66 ballots that weren't counted because they came in the day after. We had some people that only lost by 17 votes, so please vote, and of course vote for me. So there you go.
Thank you all again. Thank you, Tom. Paula?
Well, I'm going to sound like Tom's cheering section, because I came from Pasadena, Maryland, Swamp 2. Okay, and I lived end of Mountain Road in Pasadena, and we had the same thing. We had groundwater issues. We had crooked politicians that let them build everywhere, but in the median strips, and we had water issues. And my flood insurance that got me down here was $300 a month. Now, back to the solutions. There's probably three things that need to be done. Grants are a biggie. If he can get the people down here and utilize the people in-house as well as what Tom wants to do to start getting us grants. We addressed that. We got almost $3 million in grants in Pasadena to help us down in that area with the water. Then the other problem is that when you're here, I live on Windjammer. I live across, there's the road, there's my neighbor's driveway, there's my neighbor's house, and there's the golf course. Does it sound like I'm downhill? Mm-hmm. And the space between my house and my neighbor's, I love my house, I bought it anyway, and the first time it rained, Lake Paula was outside. You have to take, and this is going to get people to look at me and say, really? You're going to have to take a little bit more proactive issues than maybe what you've been doing, all right? My husband's 71, I'm 72. Lake Paula got to be kind of tedious and kept going under our house. So we bought these little boxes of drainage, we dug a hole that deep to put them in, and we ran a rain spout out to put it in out front. It's legal, we did it all the way we should have. But you're going to have to be more proactive, because looking back, you're going to find that once this community was platted out, never once did they do a water test, never. But can you go back and do anything about that? No. But you have to live with what you have and be practical about it. The other thing you have to worry about is if you do not take proactive steps, your insurance company will stop paying your claims. I saw that happen in Pasadena. I've heard of one or two people that have had it happen here. So maybe you need to form groups, try to figure out what your local responses could be, or get someone to help you, so at least you can prove you're active. Thank you, and Tom has a good idea.
Thank you. This next question, Sean will lead, followed by Cammie. Ocean Pines is served by a volunteer fire department. Currently, the department is facing a staffing shortage and having difficulty recruiting new members to join the department. As a director, what steps would you take to help increase recruitment success, or in what other ways would you support the maintenance of our high-quality fire department?
Obviously, at that point, maybe it's time to actually pay a few people to man up the services. You know, being a volunteer organization, it's very important to have those volunteers, but many counties, many cities have a share of voluntary and paid fire department personnel. Maybe we should put that in our budget. That's all it comes down to as far as my mind. You know, if we're having an issue like that, maybe we should fund them just a little bit, small stipends, benefits package, things like that possibly. Just, you know, we don't need a full-time staff as far as a full-time paid staff because of the issues at hand. We have a few volunteers, a handful of volunteers. I think we just need to maybe incentivize them in some other way to increase this position rather than somewhere else.
Thank you, Sean. Cammie, followed by Greg.
Thank you. I think volunteerism is a very important aspect of our life here in Ocean Pines. One of the things that I have particularly enjoyed in my life is the volunteerism that I've been able to accomplish through many, many, many routes. That is not to say that I'm going to sign up to be a firefighter. I wish I could, but I don't think I can do that. However, I think that this is a many-pronged approach. Certainly, and in the time that I've been here, and please excuse me if you know more about this than I do, but there are signs outside that say, be a volunteer, and that's one way of doing it, but perhaps some other things that the board could endorse or help to fund, maybe things like open houses, maybe things like trying to recruit volunteer firefighters from jurisdictions that are not necessarily within Ocean Pines, but perhaps we can recruit from some other municipalities that are close by to Ocean Pines. I think that I do not have enough data to be able to tell you what the frequency of the calls on the Ocean Pines Fire Department is. I really don't know the answer to that, but I will find out what the answer to that is, because fortunately I do know where to look. I am not sure that we have reached a point of criticality where we do not have enough volunteers to anticipate the need and to respond to all incidents. If that is the case, then obviously it is a priority for the safety of the homeowners within the Ocean Pines community to have volunteers or to have people who are perhaps paid with a stipend or a small salary on a part-time basis to be able to respond to those emergencies, to maintain the safety of this community, and to protect the assets and health and welfare of all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Cammie. Greg, followed by Paula.
Being a past chief of Ocean Pines Fire Department, I can kind of answer on some of these things. And it's like with any volunteer organizations, you have factions within the department. As with any volunteer organization, you have factions. Some good, some bad. Ocean Pines has a problem with recruitment, and is for the sheer fact there's just not that many young people that want to sit there and spend a bunch of time to do the training and things like that. And then it's what comes before the training, what comes after the training. And a lot of times it's what comes after the training or leads up to the training, how people are treated. Sometimes people feel for some reason or another they're being treated poorly, and they're not. It's just the way the organization works, and it's a hierarchy, and it's a kind of a, as I used to be told all the time, it's a quasi-military organization, where you have, chiefs and assistant chiefs and captains, lieutenants, and stuff like that. And sometimes a younger group just doesn't like to be told what to do, and sometimes that leads to a problem. The thing now is, when I was chief there, we didn't have any problem with the volunteers. We had problems keeping the volunteers. Once we got them in the door, they're okay, gung-ho. And then when they found out, that, okay, well, you're going to be out in the fire scene at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're not going to be able to go home until 7 o'clock in the morning, it runs in, well, I have to be at work at 6:30, or I have to be at work at this, or I have to be at work at that. We had one mother complain that her child came home late from school because, we had a fire on the Ocean Parkway. And kids being kids, he probably stopped to look at it. I'm going to take a couple of extra seconds. And to look at the fire, and I agree with that. We did have fire police to reroute him around, but we didn't have enough fire police to reroute him all the way around and hold the kid's hand. So I encouraged the mother to come and volunteer and help us out, and her answer was, no way. So it's a tough thing to get volunteers to do it. It's a hard job. It's a hard-working job.
Thank you, Greg. Paula, followed by Larry.
Well, we'll just slip back. In Pasadena, we had Lake Shore Volunteer Fire Department. I lived there 40 years. We saw exactly what happened, what Greg's talking about. As the companies got older and the people got older, the younger people did not want to volunteer. If they did volunteer, they got in and saw things that they didn't anticipate seeing, horrible accidents, fires, didn't like to have to put out all that effort to do anything, and we had to go to a paid company. The paid company, it takes a little more than a stipend to get someone to run into a burning building. It takes a little more than a stipend to crawl into a car and try to extract someone that's bleeding all over you. Okay, we had the solution down there for 8 paid people that they managed to put around, which sounds like a lot, but 8 paid people that they managed to put around the clock to work with the volunteers, and it reinforced the volunteers. They were there with paid people who knew what they were doing, so they weren't quite as tedious or tenuous about going in. Personal experience about why you need one. April 21st, I had dinner in Ocean City. The restaurant told me that they did not have the allergy to me, and I ate 2 helpings of it, and I'm coming across 90 Bridge and I'm not breathing. My EpiPen did not work. I got to meet a lot of really nice paramedics, and if they hadn't been there, then there would be one less person on this ballot right now. And with the age in this community, we really need to find, maybe we can get a grant from the state. I know that the county won't send their people in, but maybe there's a way to get a grant, maybe private organizations, corporations that would help us set off the 6 to 8 people we need. But you do need it, whether it's your child, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's you. It's very disconcerting to worry that maybe the help wouldn't be there. Have a safe day, and always make sure that when you vote for someone, you take into account all the things you're hearing here today. And I want to thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Paula. Next is Larry, followed by Ed.
Well, this is right in my wheelhouse. I am the liaison with the Budget and Finance Committee with our fire department. And it is a volunteer fire department. However, we do have several members that are full-time employees, not only the chief and assistant chief, and but we also have EMS who are full-time. Having gone through the budget process and just recently, a lot of people probably don't realize, but we have an obligation to fund the fire department based on our scrolls, as John Viola would call them. But we have a memorandum of understanding what we just recently updated, and this particular issue was addressed during our last budget process with the fire department. As a result, they came in asking for additional money for benefits and salaries. And in addition to that, to try to help the volunteers, there is a chunk of money in the budget to show the appreciation to the volunteers that is not salary related. If you don't know, we will be subsidizing the fire department this year at about $500,000. Now, a portion of that is for their capital expenditures. We also contribute about $137,000 a year towards purchasing new equipment as it depreciates and is no longer usable. The fire department, I can tell you, is doing everything they can to try to get volunteers in. As a director, and what I'm currently doing now, working with them, is trying to make sure that they have the assets that they need to make it feasible for them to continue.
Thank you, Larry. Ed?
Never having been involved in volunteer firefighting, I never cease to be amazed at the dedication the volunteers have exhibited over the years in various situations. But we're in a different age now. We have a lot more houses to be concerned about, and we have a lot more distractions with regard to those people who are most qualified to go out and fight these fires, the millennials. Now, let's face it, they're all distracted. They all have other things to do. They're on the screen. But a big problem with a lot of the millennials is additional education. Maybe through some kind of a program to fund college credits, much like the military. Maybe not to the extent that the military does it, but it may be a way of incentivizing younger volunteers who are going to bring the stamina, youth, and muscle that's required to fight these fires. If you could set up a program, for example, with maybe the community college, whereby for so many hours they volunteer, they get credits if they want to enroll in courses, or they get credits against the tuition. It will be a way of maybe bringing in on the prospect of reducing student debt once they get a college degree. I think that there's a great deal of merit to the concept of having paid individuals full-time on staff to manage more of the day-to-day operations from a dedicated perspective. And they would be the ones who would be professionally trained, not only to teach how to fight fires, but also to how to manage an ongoing volunteer program through other incentives to bring in the youth that we need to keep these volunteer fire companies going. So I think there has to be a lot of adjustment to the program that's deeply rooted in our heritage, but we have to roll with the times and come up with different solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. On this next question, Sean will be first, followed by Paula. Ocean Pines Association is seeking proposals for a compensation study that will include salary and benefit analysis. As a director, how will you work to see that all employees of Ocean Pines are fairly compensated and that benefits are compatible with similar positions?
As you know already, the benefits package if you're not aware, the benefits package of Ocean Pines is well above the average for the area in the county or the community or maybe not necessarily state, but in the general area of Worcester County, we are well above the average of compensation packages for those. We just need to do a study amongst the average of the state and say, hey, where do we fit in line with everywhere else? Do we need to increase their pay when they're already on the top echelon of those? I don't believe we do. I think we're already where we need to be. I think we have great staffs here that that can control everything as we're going. I don't believe we need to have any increases by any means. That's it.
Thank you. Paula, followed by Larry.
One of the things about a compensation package is it's all on how you look at it. If you look at it from the board's perspective, of course, it's staying within our parameters and our budget and staying away from our assessments. The other thing is you have to make sure that it's light, when you say package and evaluations, make sure it's light work, like work for like work. How many positions in Worcester County are part-time, temporary, seasonal, whatever? And you have to make sure you don't drift into that. Sometimes in a study, they'll take someone who works 8 months and say, well, that's full-time, and they're getting $9 an hour. Okay. And then you have to worry about training people and having them walk off, because then your budget is forced to overuse itself to train more people. It's happening right now in Ocean City and you see the ad in the paper and in the story, they're training the bus drivers, and as soon as they get that CDL, they're somewhere else. You want to make sure that we don't do that here. Apparently in the past, we've done that. We train people for positions and they're gone. There's no compensation back, there's no thank you, they're just gone. And when you do compensation, make sure that you realize that these people, most of them work on their own. So you're going to have to make sure that they also have the interest of the Pines at heart. That's not talking about giving them much, that's not extra head pats, that's not a bag of money at Christmas. It's just to make sure that when you do this study, it's a fair and equitable study, both to the employees and also to the residents of the Pines who are going to have to pay the bill. So if you're looking at it, make sure that you don't hire someone from across the bridge even up in Talbot County. You get someone who is familiar with the area and can really look at what we're paying here. We might find out we're really doing well, and we might find out we're not, but we do need to find out. And once you can tell them this is what it is, you'll find that your employees are also a lot happier.
Thank you, Paula. Larry, followed by Ed.
Well, again, I'm on the work group involved in this salary and benefits study. And let me tell you what we are doing and what's not being done. First off, there have been 2 salary studies done recently in Ocean Pines, and the board did not find them acceptable. So we are, again, an RFP has gone out. We have gotten new and updated job descriptions for each position. And our philosophy is twofold. First off, from a benefits perspective, 2 years ago, our benefits were way above what most people, not only here in Ocean Pines or in the state, but anywhere in the country, these benefits were outstanding. The board took action. The medical expenses are now shared on an 80-20 basis, and the 401k program has been adjusted also. The next step now is to address the salary issues. And our philosophy on this work group will be that the job is only worth so much money. If it's a job that is worth $50,000, because you've been here 15, 20 years, doesn't mean you make $70,000 in that job. The job is only worth so much. So that's how we're going to approach it. We will look at the information from the survey that we get back, and that's the way that we're going to approach this. And again, I think I mentioned it in the first forum. A good example is that our benefit costs for Ocean Pines employees is going up 8% a year. The salary and benefit budget for this year is only going up 4%. And I'm going to run over just a second. One other issue that we have to deal with is the state of Maryland has mandated that we have to bring our hourly salary up to $15 an hour, and that's a progressive issue, and we have to build that into the budget and also into the salary study.
Thank you, Ed, followed by Greg.
What I'm hearing is that the compensation and benefits package offered to the rank and file employees here in Ocean Pines is fantastic, magnificent, meets all expectations of national requirements and everything else. But I'm also hearing there is a breakdown in management. We don't have a general manager, and if we don't have a general manager, we don't have a person in position of leadership that can have the people who are in charge of the rank and file to make sure you're getting the best benefit for the cost that you're expending. So I think what needs to be addressed here is more so the management than the rank and file. We've got people in place, they're being compensated, the benefits package is fantastic, so why aren't we getting the work product that we're paying for? And I think that's largely the consequence of management failure and the dearth of hands-on positions that can make sure that the people who are supposed to be doing the work are in fact doing the work. So if I got elected to the board, my focus would be more of a human resources perspective as to how to maximize the work product from the people who are getting paid to do it. And if there's enough people around, and from what I understand, there's enough people employed here, and they're being well enough compensated and benefited to perform. So we should not be having a problem with having to study a compensation package when they're already being compensated in a diamond package, a gold package, if you will. So let's focus more on the management and a cost-benefit analysis and make sure that the benefit justifies the cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Greg, followed by Cammie.
I don't know you guys, but I'd love to have an 8% pay raise. I mean, how about you? I mean, wouldn't y'all just love to get another 8% in your paychecks? Boy, I would. From what I understand and from what I hear and talking to employees that have worked here in the past, you know, these guys get paid pretty good. And I agree with, was it Ed? Ed over here, is that, you know, it's not the employees just aren't told what to do sometimes, and they just kind of wander around aimlessly, hop in a truck, go for a ride. I think these guys are paid pretty good. I think their compensation packages are off the charts. Ocean City was made to take their supervisors, and it was in the newspaper, I don't recall which one, but it took and it equalized what they got paid, and it told everybody what they got paid and what their benefit packages were. Some of these guys are making $130,000 a year. I don't know about you, but you know, our cost of living here is not as great as it is other places. Some of our taxes and stuff are about the same, but our cost of living here and the way we can live and survive here is not as great as it is in other places in the state of Maryland. If you go up to Prince George's County, their property taxes up there, I was appalled. My parents' old home is almost $8,000 a year for property taxes. That's not including city and other things. So, I mean, you know, we come down here and we complain about a $3,000 or $4,000 thing. These guys are basically getting paid the equivalent of pretty close to $1 million if they go to the other side of the shore. So I think these guys got a pretty good package, and they get paid pretty good. And I don't really think you really need anybody to be wasting time and money looking in on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Cammie?
Several of the other candidates have talked about their hot-button issues. This happens to be mine. With all due respect, gentlemen, I simply cannot agree with your analysis that this is a golden calf that it needs to be endured or slayed. What was said, and is true, is that we are to undergo an increase as mandated by the Maryland State Government, and that is over a 5-year period. It's not yesterday and it's not today. But even more importantly than that, I do believe that it is important as a human resources issue, and I agree with what Larry said on this, and if I'm elected or not, I want to join this committee because I think that they are headed in absolutely the right direction, and I will join that committee. Human resources is the lifeblood of what we do here. We do not want to have a workforce that is going to turn over and over and over and lack the stability that we need to get projects done. That is a mandate. In the last forum, what I suggested, and I have done many, many, many times in my professional career, is to work with organizations to develop competency-based performance appraisals. And when a person knows what their job expectations are, they have a better chance of fulfilling them. And not only that, the more important part here is that once a person knows what their job expectation is, it is an immeasurable directive, then there are compensation packages that can be assigned to those attributes and the extent to which they got things done. I said in the last forum that I am not sure what exceeds standards means because I think you meet standards or you don't meet standards, and the compensation package must drive that. I would like to see our employees well paid. I don't think this has to do with the general manager thing. I don't think it has to do anything. What we're talking about here is a dedicated workforce that will keep us on track, keep us stable, and get projects done as we move this community forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Cammie. This next question, Ed will be first, followed by Cammie. Legal costs have been increasing every year and make up an increasing portion of our budget. How, as a director, would you work to contain legal expenses? Ed, followed by Cammie.
Okay, well, as a practicing attorney, I like legal expenses. Why did I get picked first to answer this?
Trust me, it was random.
All right, let me try to be as succinct and candid as possible. Law firms have overhead. A lot of them have Taj Mahal offices. A lot of them have big staffs. A lot of them are billing $400 or $500 an hour right now. They've got to maintain. You see all the ads on TV about if you have mesothelioma and stuff like that, you know, we'll take your case, Morgan & Morgan. I mean, the solicitations are just never ending because they have to pay overhead. They have to maintain the facility to provide those services. And guess who pays for it? Either you pay for it or your insurance company pays for it. Unfortunately for Ocean Pines, there's no insurance policy available to cover the costs of legal expenses, and it comes directly out of our pocket. And I can tell you, as a practicing attorney, self-employed for 45 years, I learned very early that overhead is the bane of business, and you've got to watch overhead, so you've got to watch your costs. Now, when I first came to the first meeting about becoming a member of the board, it was mentioned that the cost of a restraining order against individuals who are in violation of code regulations concerning the condition of the property was $50,000. Well, my approach to that is there may be other ways to enforce the code, and my suggestion was take a look at the model in the state of Delaware where they enforce the code by a series of notices that you're in violation, posting the property in violation, giving notice that if the violation continues, that the authority will come in and correct the situation. And the cost of correction is not going to be part of a citation. It's going to be billed directly to your taxes. And so consequently, when your tax bill comes out, it's going to include the cost of abatement of your violations. So I'm suggesting that there are other ways to deal with legal situations than paying for the Taj Mahals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Cammie, followed by Sean.
Well, I guess this is a little serendipitous that the two lawyers in the room get to go first. I think that, in essence, one of the ways that we control legal costs is already right in front of us. And that is that the people who are running for the board, the people who are on the board, are very, very, very smart individuals. I've met with many of them, and I've talked to them, and I think they are very smart individuals. In Maryland, we are fortunate enough to have our statutes coded, and there are multiple books that tell us lawyers how to be lawyers and how to assess situations. I believe that some of the groundwork for this can be done at the board level with some legal support, but not necessarily as run by a lawyer who comes in to do all of this. I also would happen to agree with Ed that we do not have to engage the Taj Mahal lawyers. I'm not sure that that has been done, but it did seem to me in the forensic audit that there was a fairly hefty price tag that was being paid for legal services here. I would like to speak to other board members to see why those costs were incurred, such as they were, because I wasn't there when these decisions were made, but that is something that I would like to learn. As a lawyer, without practicing law on the board, I believe that I could bring to the board some of the insight that I've had in buying and selling various properties such as bars in Harford County. I've had that kind of experience, and I'd like to bring that experience to the board, but I do think that we need to use some of our internal expertise as we approach the problem of protective orders, et cetera, moving outside of the domains of the board's function. Thank you.
Thank you, Cammie. Sean, followed by Paula.
I in no way disagree that having legal counsel on the board is not something that would be, it would definitely be a benefit of any matter. The one thing we do need to do is bring the legal counsel back to the shore. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure Tom will have the answer. I believe it was a $150,000 retainer this year for a legal counsel from across the bridge. Yeah, I'm sure that's not much over there. But over here, a $150,000 retainer would probably sit somebody up in a Taj Mahal office somewhere here in Ocean Pines. Maybe somebody that actually has an office, right around the corner from Ocean Pines could possibly be our counsel. It's just something in my mind, that you can say, hey, how can we save money by evaluating the procedures and processes that we choose that particular counsel? Why did we go across the bridge and choose that person? Were they the best person to deal with the situations at hand? Or was it just somebody that somebody called upon? I think we need to bring it back to the shore. Somebody in the county that's aware of everything in the county, and lower that cost a little.
Thank you, Sean. Paula, followed by Larry.
Well, I went to a board meeting recently, and I asked the same thing. Why are we still paying that man to drive across the bridge? All right, that's a lot of money, and the hourly rate starts when the key turns in the car. All right, plus the fact, if you've ever gone into a courtroom anywhere, not being an attorney, but having been there with people who, I was a CASA volunteer, and I worked with the people in prisons. When you walk into a courtroom, it's always nice to have the judge not look askance as to why you have an attorney from Harford County when you're in Anne Arundel. No matter what they say, it makes a difference. And down here, back to the culture again, the type of thing that a judge might find acceptable down here might not be, and we spent all this money. I was aghast too, sir, when I heard how much they wanted for just some of the basic law things. I don't really want to buy the Taj Mahal. I'd be happy to buy a tent with our budget lately. But if we're going to go into the future and we're going to have all of these legal things handled, they need to be done by someone, and I keep beating this word to death, that understands the culture of the shore, that understands this side of the bridge as opposed to the other. Not that it's going to make it crooked, not anyone with a hand in the cookie jar, but just understands the processes and the regulations that we don't want to trip over. We don't want to go file something and find out, didn't need that. Oh, didn't need that one either. Okay, so it's like going to your doctor. You want the one that knows what treatment you really need and is not trying to pay for his waiting room. I don't doubt that the legal opinions, and a lot of them were opinions that we got, were incorrect, but I also noticed that a lot of them people raised their eyebrows too. I have a lot of friends that are attorneys, and I'd say something to them, and they'd say, why did you even go in that direction? We need to save that money. $90,000 over budget last year, was it? $90,000 over? and that we're not even done. So when we're worried about our assessments, worry about that man driving over the, or woman driving over the bridge.
Thank you. Larry, followed by Greg.
Well, let me correct one thing. We do not have a $150,000 retainer agreement with our attorneys. We are paying them on a time and expense basis. I do agree that we should try to get a law firm back over here on this side of the bridge, and I can tell you, last week I spent a large amount of time trying to retain an attorney locally so that we could use them in our negotiation with the Mad Ork contract. And quite honestly, I think we were hometowned, and everyone we talked to either had a conflict or would not even return our calls. So it's an issue we're dealing with. Why are we over budget? Well, there's a couple reasons. First off, when we went through the budgeting process, the Budget and Finance Committee recommended a particular number, and in the effort to try to cut expenses, that number was reduced. However, part of the problem was a large amount of money being incurred by a former director who every time he had an issue, he picked up the phone and called our attorney. Every time you pick up the phone and call a lawyer, that's when the meter starts. That issue's been addressed by the board. There's more control on that issue. What I have done in my career, I spent 36 years in the insurance claim business, and I can't tell you how many hours I spent reviewing attorney bills to make sure that they were not charging too much. And I've used that expertise in our collections process with our current firm to make sure that we are getting a reasonable rate for our work. And again, Ed, I wanted to correct you on something too. We do have insurance that does pay our legal fees in most circumstances.
Thank you. In this next question, Ed will be first, followed by Larry. In these forums, the last one and this one, oh, I'm sorry.
Am I up?
Yes, sir. Oh, Greg got that last one. I apologize, Greg.
Lawyer.
Yeah, well.
Lawyer.
I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't mind. I don't know what we spend on lawyers and stuff like that. I know that you can go in the phone book right now and probably see 50 lawyers in the Lower Eastern Shore, Salisbury, Wacomico, well, same thing, in Somerset and Worcester County. So why are we going to anywhere else other than where we live to bring a lawyer here? And then to pick up a phone and have them give us a bill. Well, 90% of the lawyers here, and I dated a lawyer, and I noticed she didn't bill for people that gave her a call and asked her for advice or stuff. She never billed for that. She fought with me a lot, but she never billed. I never paid for that either. So, and she was a trial lawyer too. So she's a smart person. She's right out here on Route 50. And I guarantee you that if you went out and talked to her, she would love to be the lawyer here. And her rates aren't that bad. Again, I know that. And so, there's a lot of things we can do. If we're paying $150 an hour, I definitely think you could get that down, or whatever we're paying. And we definitely don't have to pay portal to portal from the other side of the shore to get a good lawyer. There's a bunch of them here. And I think we can get our costs down with that and get a good lawyer sitting in here who would just sit in there and give you his opinion free of charge. So, that's about all I got on that. So, but I live with one.
Okay, and again, I apologize, Greg.
Can we get a heart monitor here?
All I can say is you get what you pay.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying before I messed up, in the last forum and in this one, we've asked questions about issues. Let's change focus. What do you think is working well in Ocean Pines? Ed, followed by Larry.
Well, personally, I think the snow removal is fantastic. I can tell you, after living in Pennsylvania for 73 years, snow removal here, it melts by noon, and we don't even have a snow plow, so that I know of. But for the most part, I think the most impressive thing about Ocean Pines is the family orientation that this community offers. All the pools, the beachfront, the activities for the kids, the playground. I think it's very gratifying to see such a strong focus on children. And I can tell you, coming from a church in my hometown that decided not to focus on children, that church has fallen by the wayside and lost a lot of attendance. So I think it's good to see that Ocean Pines is focusing on children and the grandchildren. And I remember when we first built our house here, one of the big cost coverages was to rent it out for a little bit in the summertime. And the nicest thing we saw was that the house appealed to a lot of grandparents who would rent it for a week or two and bring their kids in from Kansas and Iowa, and it's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, so we had plenty of room for everybody to stay. So the house was sort of self-screening as far as that was concerned, but it was very gratifying to see that the market, through the grandparents, sustained an effort to entertain children. And I like to say that with the publication of the, I guess it's a quarterly magazine with regard to seasonal activities and things like that, largest part of that magazine is devoted to activities for the kids. And I think that's important to maintain that focus for the benefit of the families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Larry, followed by Sean.
I think I've mentioned in the prior forum and again earlier today that one of the things that's really working well for Ocean Pines right now is the current board working with the general manager and the various committees. You can see that things are being done. We've got 4 major projects ongoing, and we're moving forward. We're still in the process of recovering from the $1.6 million in losses we've had over the last couple years. From a financial standpoint, as Tom mentioned earlier, we were $130,000 in the black this year, and that money is being allocated back to reduce that deficit that we currently have. One of the issues that I've mentioned before, and I think we need to look at again, is a capital reserve funding mechanism. And again, if you don't understand how our finances work, we have replacement reserves, and we have our operational funds. Every time we go to buy something new that we're not replacing, that charge goes into the operational funds, which directly raises our assessments. So for example, if we needed to buy an additional police vehicle, so $60,000, $70,000 or whatever it would be, that would be apportioned in your assessment for every home. What I would like to see is a percentage of our replacement reserves taken, put it aside, and used for capital funding. That way the money is put aside and it does not increase our assessments. But besides that, I think things are going very well, and I hope if I'm elected to the board, my goal is to try to continue the progress we've made.
Thank you, Larry. Sean, followed by Cammie.
Some of the things going well in the community. Joe Reynolds Forum, going very well. The affordable life on the shore for people here. Ocean Pines gives that affordable lifestyle for people because it doesn't have the city taxes encumbered by the town of Berlin. It doesn't have the Ocean City taxes, and it has affordable housing, which then again allows for the family setting, which is going very well as per the playground sitting out right behind us here, and the activities taking place in this building as well. And I believe we are being followed by a first-time homebuyer seminar, which is going very well in here, as this is one of the most sought-after areas for a first-time homebuyer. Also, the aggressive approach by the Public Works Department to get at some of these issues and try to support them. I think it's going very well over the last, handful of months since it was kind of, I wouldn't say stagnant before, but it wasn't as aggressive.
I think that there are many things that are going very well here in Ocean Pines. As a very active tennis player and one who enjoys the amenities of the yacht club and the pool, I think that those are among some of the best amenities I have ever seen. We are blessed to have people, I know Dale Ash isn't here, but I would mention him by name, who has coordinated our tennis program, made sure that people of all levels are free to play and can enjoy the play that is going on here. I too share the concept or the consideration that the board is working well right now. They seem to, what I have seen just in the year that we have been here, is that there seems to be more transparency in the board. It seems that we are hearing more about the issues that they are facing. I also believe that the Department of Public Works, at least from what we've heard with the addition of Colby to that group, is working well to attempt to resolve some of the problems. That is not to say that they are solved. I had a very interesting car ride this morning with a member of our community who wanted to show me that if I was selected as a member of the board, which I hope I will be, that there are things that require our immediate attention. There are C&P cable boxes that have twisted cable in them that we need to be doing something about because they present an immediate threat of harm to our public. They are an immediate threat of harm to the safety of children, especially those that are planted around near where the school buses reside. I would like to see something about that, something done about that. But all in all, this is a great place to live, folks. How many other places have 5 pools, have tennis courts, have pickleball championships, have all of these things that we can all come to use and enjoy? And I hope that this will only continue because it is a great place to live. Thank you.
Followed by Greg.
I think that we've done extraordinarily well. 13 years of being in and out of here, the last 4 permanently. What I've seen in the past year, you go to a board meeting now and actually someone writes something down. You get messages back. They have increased the transparency. They've changed the way that we get to look at the budget. They didn't hide the audit. Everyone thought that was going to happen. They interact with people. They are introducing us to board members and boards. There are a lot of boards here. Most of us didn't know what they were or where they were. No matter how many meetings I went to, I only thought we had maybe 2 or 3 boards. We have about 10. And they're introducing them to us as a means to not have to call the general manager with everything. I think that's hugely important, and I think it's a great asset. And the other thing is, what I saw last night at the yacht club, I saw community. I saw people there with children. I saw people there dancing and laughing, talking to other 20 and 25-year-olds. I saw 30-year-olds. I saw 40-year-olds who were there and stayed there, didn't come, grab a Diet Coke and go home. I saw a man much older than me dancing, okay? And that's what we have, that community. And that's, if I'm elected to the board, I would like to put forth my ability to cross barriers, age barriers, to continue to bring them into the board, to make them feel welcome at the board. Because if we can take what was there last night and encourage them to participate more actively, then I think that we can continue well into the next 50 years for Ocean Pines.
Just a moment. We've talked about many issues, but let's shift focus. What do you think Ocean Pines does well?
Does well. I think it does well with getting good people to come to the same place. We have a few people in here that come from other areas like New Jersey, New York, and stuff like that, and for some reason they complain about where they lived, then they come here, then they complain about where they're living. And I think they're wrong. You know, when I came here, it was always called the land of pleasant living, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's a lifestyle. You have to change the way you think. You have to change the way you do things. You have to change everything that you're used to doing to come here. I'm from up around Washington, D.C. You couldn't go shopping unless, well, let me rephrase that. You could go shopping 15 minutes away from your home in any direction you went to. 20 minutes at the most if you wanted a Hex. Down here, it's 45 minutes to get to Salisbury if you do the speed limit, and to get to a mall and stuff like that. But I think that we're very fortunate to have this. I think the group that's in there now has done a fairly good job. I agree with some of the things. Matter of fact, most of the things that they've done. Just don't look away, Steve. You're looking down. But I also think that some of the things that they need improvements, and I think some of the things I don't appreciate or like what they've done. But on a whole, I think they've done a good job. So I think that we're in a good shape, and I think that we should be very thankful we live here. And we're very fortunate to be in our own little place. You know, the yacht club, for once, now has good food. It needs work on its service, but the food there is great. Go there, please. It's just so cool to go there now as opposed to years past. It's really neat. I'm not a pool person, so I don't use the pools or anything like that. I use a golf course, beautiful course. Go use that. It's a great course. Put your divots back. I was told that many times.
Thank you, Greg. Stay right there. We're going to begin. We're going to go to closing statements now in reverse ballot order. So moving forward, each of you has 2 minutes, except Ed has 3 minutes. Okay? So proceed.
I think I said it. We're very fortunate to be here in the Pines. We're not oceanfront, but according to some people, yeah, we're going to be in 10 years. I honestly don't believe that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think in our lifetimes, you know, in our children's lifetimes and our grandchildren's lifetimes and so forth and so on, that we're not going to see that. I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot. But I think, you know, I look around, we got some good people up here to run. We had some great people last year run. I think that a couple of people should have won other than some of the ones that did, but hey, that's okay. That's the way the game's played. I think they did a good job. And I think that was, you know, to come up and step up and serve it's amazing. It's a tough thing to do. First, the other thing is, it's a tough thing to stand in front of a crowd and give a speech. So that should be the first thing everybody should be thankful for, is that we're able to do that. This is very difficult for me to be up here in front of people. I'm not a well-spoken person. I apologize about that, and sometimes I stumble over some of my wording. I would like to see some changes made. I would like to see some of the projects we have slowed down and reevaluated for cost and for size. And that would be one of the things that I would do and make sure that it would happen, or at least try to make sure it would happen. But I hope you all vote for me. I appreciate the 770 people who voted for me last time. But if they vote for me again, I'll be real happy. So, thank you.
Okay, since I have 3 minutes to fill. Let me go back to 19. Seriously, you folks don't know me. I haven't been involved in Ocean Pines directly with any of the administration or management or anything. And I applaud those who have, and I believe all the candidates are very well qualified. However, back when I was building my life, let's see, where was I? Penn State. When I was at Penn State, I was treasurer of my fraternity. I made extra money on weekends, lead singer in a band. We opened one night for the Young Rascals, and we were so good. Eddie Brigatti, you guys remember the Young Rascals, Eddie Brigatti and Felix Good Lovin' and all that stuff. came out and kicked us off stage because he had to catch a plane back to New York. So after I graduated, went to law school, got drafted, went in the Army, did basic, did AIT, did all that testing, didn't know what my test scores were. I finally found out a couple of months ago what my test scores were, and back then they had this thing called the Armed Forces Qualification Test, and it turns out of 99 I scored 94, which put me in the top category. I could have been a general. Okay, but those are some of the things you don't know about a person unless they tell you. Wrote to St. Louis and got all my records. Anybody wants to see them, you can look at them. I don't hide all that stuff. Like I said, I nearly flunked out of Penn State my freshman year and just barely made it through law school, despite, well, my freshman year anyway, despite the fact that I was under pressure from being drafted and going to Vietnam, because that's where everybody went back then, and I went there. So we went to Vietnam, went back to law school, graduated, and so I went back home after being away for 10 years and started to practice law. My wife and I found this 300-year-old stone mansion that was an original colonial plantation house. And we didn't know what we were buying, but it was one of those things that got featured on TV in This Old House and so forth and so on. The guy that presently owns it actually had it put on TV for its historical significance, but we lived there for 30 years, and I was a weekend warrior on that house, and we got it on the Pennsylvania Historical Registry. We bought the big barn next door, had that resurrected and saved, and as a result of selling that big barn, we were able to buy the lot and house here in Ocean Pines. So it seems like wherever I go, whatever I get involved in, I always get picked to be some kind of a leader. And I was going to tell you a short story about how I got a guy off on a misdemeanor charge. He was going to jail for a felony, but if I get elected, I'll tell you that one.
Well, I don't have the accolades once again as some of these people up here, but I was president of my fraternity, not just the treasurer. I was president of my fraternity. I went on to work for the national fraternity as a leadership consultant, how to teach people how to run an organization properly. I'm familiar with Robert's Rules of Orders and the basic structure of a business meetings. I went on, I ran restaurants all the way up from pretty much the low guy on the totem pole and moved my way up to the top. I am in real estate now, and I am currently, as of this month, ranked number 11 out of over 1,250 agents from here to Baltimore. When I do something, I commit to it 100%. I move forward. And mind you, out of those 11 people, 10 people that are ahead of me, 7 or 8 of them are in Annapolis, where the value of a home is 4 times as much. So it's hard to compete with those people. Anyway, point of the story is when I go at something, I go at something 100%, and I am by far the youngest member of this candidates board, but I look to be part of the future of this community for the long term, to look at the benefits from now, moving forward continuously over the next however many years I can grace the presence. But I hope to get your vote, and I hope to help all of you reach your goals and what you wish to achieve here as a community as a whole to make it a better living experience for everyone. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank all of you, whether you're at home, having that cold beer on your couch, or you're here listening to what we have to say, for taking the time to hear us all out. It's really important that you know what's going on in the Pines. I hope you will see from the history that I had that I do not take on responsibilities lightly, that once I've pledged or vowed or hired on to do something, I make sure that I do it, find a way to do it, or find someone to help me do it. I've always been given it the best that I ever had came from my grandmother's common sense, that if you promise something, you do it. I'm definitely not afraid of hard work. But when you hear that long list of things, remember it was over a lot of years because I'm ridiculously old. I can reiterate pages of what I did, but I think when you consider electing someone, it's more important that you know who they are, understand what they believe in, and understand how they feel about what they're doing. If you don't believe in them, when you find something that happens that you didn't like, you need to know for sure that they did the best they could for what needed to be done. I'm not going to say I'm going to get everything that everyone ever wanted if I'm elected, but if you don't get it, you have an understanding and a transparency as to why. And we're going to also work, I would also work to continue with the board to make sure that the transparency we're seeing is continuing. It makes it a lot easier if people understand what's going on. I do hope you will listen to the answers later again online if you haven't had answers here. And I want to thank you again very, very much for making the Pines, all of you who are out there and who live here. I came here, I don't complain, I don't gripe, I ask one hell of a lot of questions at meetings, but I don't ever complain about this place. This is a wonderful, wonderful place. Make sure that whoever you elect, that you work with them to make sure it continues for the next 50 years, because there's no place like Ocean Pines. That's why everyone comes here.
Thank you, Paula. In contemplating this closing statement, I want to reiterate that I, too, have entered into many projects in my life that I think qualify me for this position. I have a strong commitment to volunteerism. If you read the bio that was produced on all of us, I have volunteered throughout the course of my life, whether it was being a guardian ad litem in several courts as a newer attorney, in conducting mock trials with students who wanted to learn what it was like to be in a courtroom over a period of time. I was involved in the Junior League in Akron, Ohio, where I also did guardian ad litem work and worked ceaselessly for some of these kids, recognizing that the true measure of commitment to a project is the volunteerism that you put into it. I am ready, willing, and able to take on this project. I think that I bring things to the board, or would bring things to the board that are really important. And again, just to reiterate, not to bore you, but just to reiterate and underscore what I think is important, is that I have a significant history in strategic planning. I believe that that could be a benefit to any group that I would become involved in. I have a very expansive experience in developing competency-based performance appraisals. That, too, I think would be of benefit. I have survived several trials in my life. I'm the mother of 4 children. That's not always a very easy road. I think I have patience and endurance that has come from those experiences. My husband and I also had, I would like to call it a pleasure, but I'm not sure that it really was, of serving in Liberia for a time with a population of Kisi warriors that were trying to develop a better way of life for themselves. And we committed ourselves to that project, and boy, that was not an easy thing, particularly when I contracted malaria, but it was something that we committed to. So I hope when you're considering your vote, whether you're at home or here, that you'll consider my application, my dedication to this community, and vote for me as one of the upcoming board members. Thank you.
Well, as I said, this is a great community to live in. And I realized that 37 years ago when I bought a lot down here and knew at that time this is the place where I wanted to retire. Here I am, and I'm retired here. This is a great place to live. I said in the last forum, you know, after college, I went into the military, I served in the 82nd Airborne. I was a paratrooper, and I don't know if what was scarier, jumping out of that airplane the first time or wanting to be a member of the board of directors here in Ocean Pines. But I can tell you, while we have a great slate of candidates up here, I think I can say that I am the only one who is actively involved in, currently in some of the decision-making and helping the board decide what they're going to do by all the various work groups that I am involved in, excuse me, as well as being the chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee. If you're good enough to give me your vote, I will not need time getting up to speed on what's occurring here in Ocean Pines. I think that the time that I've been on the Budget and Finance Committee and the various work groups, I've demonstrated an ability to work with the board, our general manager, and the various committees, as well as the department heads. I would again ask that you support my candidacy and vote for me when you receive your ballots. Thank you.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the entire Ocean Pines Association, we'd like to say thank you for volunteering to run for this position. Members of the association, the next thing you will see from the Elections Committee is a mailing which will contain the information about the upcoming annual meeting and your ballot. Please follow the instructions on marking your ballot. It's very straightforward, but every year we get some who mismark, and those are simply ignored. They're not valid ballots. So we want to count your ballot. Please help us allow to do that. The ballots are due back by the close of business August 7th. How many times have I had to say that lately? But we don't want your ballot to arrive late and not be counted. So please ensure that your ballot is either in the ballot box or received at our Berlin post office address by the close of business on 7th of August. We are adjourned.